Our next speaker is Sarah Peltier. Sarah is actually the newest addition to the Lady Boss Midwest team, and we are so happy to have her. Sarah is the genius behind Lady Boss Social and all of our new merch. Sarah has spent the last 11 years developing business and marketing skills through work in retail, nonprofit, and social enterprise sectors. In addition to marketing, Sarah enjoys event planning and production. If you've seen her running around an event, directing traffic, know that she is in her element. Sarah has enjoyed working on local initiatives such as the Downtown Plaid Friday events, the Shop Small Summer Campaign, and Fashion Revolution FM. Sarah attended Minnesota State University Moorhead and lives in Fargo with her husband and 2 dogs. And when she's not working, you'll find Sarah outdoors.
All right, well, I am so happy to be here with you guys this morning. It is flying by, like Laura said, that is for certain. So everything that you have learned from Katie, Tatiana, and Morgan, now we're going to try to put into practice through content planning. As we go, if you have any of those questions, pop them in the questions section, and I will get to them at the end. Let's jump right in. All right. So to begin, I would like to share how I view social media. I have a background that is heavy in retail business, retail and small business social media management. And so I like to think of content as a conversation with the potential customer or client. So when you're in a retail setting, something that really impacts the chance of a sale is a conversation with the customer, really connecting with the customer. So Katie talked earlier about identifying your audience and really speaking to their needs. And that's what we want to do through the tone and the voice of our content. And then, think of every single touch point of content planning and content strategy and social media as an opportunity to connect with that customer and to really share who you are and perhaps, make that into a sale. Think of how we set up spaces in stores too. We set up this beautiful curated space. We draw them in with that space. We provide them pretty things to look at, and then we tell them the stories behind those things. That customer experience is exactly what we want to do with social media. And the way to create more engaging content is planning. So I'm going to share with you 5 tips and tricks and strategies that I have learned over the years. Each one of these tips could probably be its own 20-minute presentation, but we're just going to do the best we can with the time that we have. So to start off, the best place to start when thinking about creating engaging content is your strategy. May seem simple, but a lot of times I know I'm guilty of this myself. I look at the clock and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 1 o'clock already. I haven't made a social post for today. Quick, I need to find something to post about. It's not going to be great. I want you to be thoughtful or intentional, not only with the content that you're creating, but also the order in which you create content. So if you're a photographer, it's probably going to make most sense to start with your photos and sit down and create a month's worth of content and piece out your photos, plan out your photos, how you want that customer experience and that customer journey to look like, and then fill in with the captions. Now, if you're a small business or you provide a service or a maker, maybe it makes more sense to start with the captions and create captions for the month. Because you'll want to talk about different products that are coming up, or maybe that you have a shipment of something coming in that you want to sneak peek a week beforehand and build up excitement. Maybe you have promotions or events or specials or something going on. So start with either the photos or the captions, but just pick one and start with it. So this is kind of my little flow chart of how I plan my content in the order that I do it. So I batch create content, which is it's dedicating time, a week, 2 weeks, ideally a month before that content is scheduled to go live, and creating as much in one sitting as possible. This gives you time later on to go back and look at that content and edit it or hone it. If there are political events or social events that have happened that you need to address, if you have a plan in place and you already know what you're posting that day, it's much easier to switch and to pivot and to make a different plan than if you have no plan whatsoever and you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh my gosh, I have to think of something to post today. What happened in the news? There we go. The reason that I batch create content and I suggest people do that is that, again, it allows you to visualize how your feed is going to look. It's going to allow you to see, on a large scale, all of the content that you have available to provide that month. And then you can identify, maybe if you're on Twitter, what things you want to tweet about. Not everything has to go onto every social platform. You can identify which pieces you want to put on Facebook, which things might make a good Facebook boosted post. If you have everything spread out at once and everything planned, you can make those decisions. If you're just doing it on the fly, it's going to be a waste of time and you're not going to be able to be strategic about what you're promoting. With scheduling content, there's tons of tips and tricks out there about what time is best to post on which platform. A strategy that I utilize is I just look at my Facebook and Instagram insights and specifically my audience, when are they most active on social media? And then I try to, post according to those times. Obviously, there are going to be TikToks and there's going to be tutorials and everything else where every single social media platform is going to have their own suggestion as to when to post your content. I think that you don't want to schedule everything always at noon or everything always at 8. Play around, find what works best for your audience. Then once you have things batch created and scheduled, you have time to brainstorm stories. You'll actually be able to think about what you want your stories to do for you, what kind of content you want in your stories, and you're going to create much more engaging content because you're not, spending 2 hours sitting and making your post and your caption on the day that it's due to post, and then you don't have any energy for stories or for engaging with your audience. Once you have your content scheduled and published, once you have your stories published and going, you definitely want to engage with your audience. So anytime that you have somebody comment, make sure that you're commenting back or liking that comment, sharing user-generated content or replies to your stories. We'll talk through all of that moving on. My second tip is using writing prompts. There are tons of lists out there, just pick one. Writing prompts are really handy, even if you are great and really comfortable with creating captions. Visually seeing what your captions are doing for you helps to create more engaging content. I'm going to show you what that looks like. Here I have 30 writing prompts that I have color-coded with my kind of messaging or content pillars. So Morgan talked about content pillars from a photography standpoint. These are more content pillars from a messaging and strategy viewpoint. So what am I providing and what do I want? When I have them color-coded like this, I can see if I'm pushing one content pillar too much. I don't ever want to have more than 2 of the same pillar in a row, just because I want my audience to feel, every day is something fresh, something new. I'm showing them different sides to my business, different sides of me. That's what's going to be engaging to our audience, is keeping it fresh, keeping it new. So some of these examples, you'll get a handout with all of these writing prompts for you to utilize however you wish. I just put together some examples. So when you're posting something educational, well, you don't want to just like post all of, your tips and tricks like all at once. You might want to tell followers about a new product or feature and why it's important, or what it does for you, or different information about its creation process. You might want to, as a photographer, walk people through some tips or tricks if they're the subjects of being photographed. I know Nicole Mendoza, Nicole Midwest, who's also one of our panelists later, she's put together some amazing posing tips, reels for Instagram. And I mean, like, I hate being in front of the camera, but I love those videos because it's quick, it's actionable, and it's easy. For behind the scenes, this is pretty self-explanatory, but obviously showing your process and using video content here is really great. It helps provide transparency, authenticity, and helps your followers really connect with you as a person and not just a business or a brand trying to push a product or a service. And then the one that can be really interesting and can be frustrating on social media is asking questions. The biggest thing here is you need to ask questions that work for you. So if you are a clothing boutique and you have a picture of somebody in your clothing like eating an ice cream cone, don't ask what your favorite color of ice cream is, because that provides you with zero information that is helpful for you as a business. And because it's not relevant, you have a much lower chance of actually getting interaction on that post. So asking for opinions on new designs, and stories can be a great place to ask for opinions. Ask for naming suggestions. If you have a new product that you're launching, ask people what you should name it. And like I said, again, I cannot stress this enough, ask questions that give you feedback. So next is perhaps the most valuable tip I've ever been given, and this is to pay attention to the colors used in your photos. This will give your grid consistency and aesthetic appeal, which definitely helps with getting more engagement from your audience. One color from each photo should be represented in the next, paying attention to neutral, breaks, and color transitions. Your customers they make a split second, you have a split second to make an impression. A cohesive feed can turn that split second into 3 seconds, which can then lead to them clicking into posts, engaging on your story, and becoming a follower. So let's look at a couple of feeds that I think do a good job. On the left, we have a photographer and graphic designers feed. This is a really great example of color and how color transitions from one photo to the next, and how you can kind of move the dial up. So at the bottom we have some pinks and blues, and then a couple of neutral breaks. That middle line of 3 is pretty blue heavy. Then we have some more neutrals, and then we're obviously transitioning into a little bit darker of an orange tone. So this is a really great example. I also love how she used the themes of palm trees to kind of, again, connect and give cohesion to her grid. In the center is handpicked goods, which I wanted to show because it's a good example of white space. It's really light and airy. But also, I wanted to point out the picture of the owner, Amanda, gets like 3 times more engagement than any other photos on her grid. Excuse me. And so what I would love to encourage you to do is take a look and see which one of your photo types gets the most engagement from your followers, and then strategically plan when you post those pictures so that every 5 to 7 days you get a bump in engagement, and then that'll trickle down, and eventually you'll start seeing a lot higher engagement on all posts. Then on the right, that is from this shop called Marnie in Des Moines, Iowa. And it's my favorite boutique, but I also love their social media. It is the owner, Angela, does such a good job with color balance and moving color throughout her grid, adding in neutrals within pops of colors. But one thing I wanted to point out is you can see there are 3 photos that have white borders. There was a trend in Instagram to have like your whole feed be white borders and have little photos so it kind of looks like a scrapbook. I don't see that being used a whole lot anymore, but I love how Angela strategically used that here to give breathing room and white space to her grid. Had she just posted the pictures by themselves without those white borders, it would have felt a little bit more cluttered. But because she posted them in the order and the way that she posted them, it gives the grid breathing room and some space and really keeps it light and bright. So the 4th tip is to use a planning calendar. You can use a PDF, an online application, an Excel spreadsheet. It doesn't matter. There are tons out there. Done is better than perfect. Just pick one and try to make it a habit. A plan that changes is better than no plan at all. So this is a monthly content calendar that I put together. It will be provided to you through that link. I would use this together with a visual planning application like Snug or Preview that shows how your photos are going to look. And then I would also use some sort of content planning scheduling application or spreadsheet. Like I said, you could use Sprout, you could use CoSchedule, Asana, or a spreadsheet, whatever works for you to compile all of your content in one place so that you can schedule it really nicely. But the monthly content calendar, this is something that I have, but I usually have one of these printed and posted so I can just glance. I have them numbered by the day of the month. And honestly, you could just reuse this calendar every month. Like, no one's gonna know. In my head, the TikTok song is playing. But yeah, I mean, you can reuse this every single month. Nobody's going to be paying attention that like on the 15th day of the month last month, you also created a mini lesson. Nobody's going to know. All right, so the last tip, and we're motoring through these, the last tip and most important in my honest opinion is to not underestimate stories. Stories are an opportunity to have conversations with your audience, and it's easier to engage with them in stories than it is feed posts. These are 5 kind of call out suggestions for stories. So start with video content. You should definitely be using video content whenever possible, but especially in stories. If you are a clothing boutique, doing try-on videos is a great place to start. If you are a photographer, doing a video showing your editing process is a great place to start. If you are providing a different kind of service or a different kind of business, just showing video content and even just flipping the camera around and it's you talking about something, again, goes to develop, that all goes to develop transparency, authenticity, and trust in your brand. If you have the ability to do so, if you're selling on Instagram or if you have a Facebook store that's connected to your Instagram, whatever, link the products if you have the ability to do so. Swipe up is much more effective for shopping than link in bio. But unfortunately, unless you have an Instagram store, you won't be able to link anything unless you have 10,000 followers or are verified, which is annoying. And if you all want to petition Instagram on behalf of this marketing lab to maybe drop that number to like 5,000, that would be great. Next one is to share user-generated content. Batch share it to make it seem more, to make it more impactful. So if you get like one story reply, maybe wait until you have a couple story replies and then share them all at once. Or if you have a hashtag that you're using, store up the photos that use that hashtag and maybe share them all on Thursdays so that you have like 10 photos to share on Thursday instead of 2 photos a day. It'll just seem a lot more impressive to the users and it'll be more impactful for you. Again, utilize those engagement stickers wisely. Remember to ask questions and use those stickers in ways that work for you. So asking this or that, but like make it something that actually gives you information. So if you are trying to decide on colors for a new pair of earrings, if you're like a clay earring maker, ask those questions and use those stickers to get that information. It'll boost your engagement, but it also gives you something to work with. Through it all, remember that stories are a conversation. Don't post one photo and walk away. Your story should be a minimum of 3 pages with some type of call to action, engagement sticker, or purpose to the story. So I've been managing social media for years and content planning is still, I will admit, my least favorite part. Devoting time to developing a content planning habit will pay off in the end. Through that process and being intentional about content planning, you'll produce high value, high quality content, which results in more followers, more engagement, and more sales. Whew, that was a lot. Honestly, like I said, each one of these could be its own 20-minute talk. We're gonna have a little bit of time for questions, so let's jump into that.
So our first question is, if I only wish to pursue one social media type, which one is the best bang for the time invested?
Ooh, that's a really great question. So if you're only going to invest in one social media type, if you're really going to go for it and you're going to invest, I would suggest Instagram. That's where I would go. But again, it depends on your target audience, because if you're selling something where you're targeting people over the age of 35, you're probably going to want to go with Facebook. But if you're targeting millennials, Gen Z, if you're targeting anybody like that, I would definitely say Instagram. But it depends on your audience.
If you are using Instagram and Facebook currently, is it detrimental to post everything to both?
So if you're using both platforms, I would definitely say differentiate, if not the content, the messaging. So on Instagram, you're going to use different words to describe actions that you want users to take, where on Facebook, we don't have some of those options. So be conscious about the content and don't just copy and paste the same thing. Also, if you're posting photos for aesthetic, so if you're posting them simply because they look good on your grid, don't post those to Facebook. Use Facebook for information that is really beneficial to users and to your followers. So if you have a sale coming up, if you have a new product, that kind of thing. But you don't need to post like vibes pictures to Facebook necessarily.
I like that. Do your stories always aim to collaborate with your scheduled content?
Yes and no. I try to have them work somewhat together, but sometimes there'll be things that happen during the day or information that you come across that just like needs to be shared and needs to be told. And so if you have the opportunity to reference it a little bit, that's, I think, best, because then if somebody's only looking at stories and they see that you have a post, they might go to your post and you might get that like or that share or that save. But not every story has to relate exactly to what you're talking about that day. You can go on rants, you can go on tangents, you can share usable information when it's necessary and if it's good for your followers.
Is it more important to focus on stories or reels? Which gets the widest audience or engagement?
Okay, so reels, if you can dedicate time to getting good at reels and you know, being conscious and very like specific about what information you're sharing in reels, definitely dedicate that time to reels, because through the explore tab in Instagram, if you have a good strategy with reels, if you have them labeled right, that kind of thing, you will get a lot more views than stories. Stories are only viewable to your followers, but reels are viewable to everybody if you make them public. So if you have time, definitely invest in reels. But if you don't have time to create all that video content or you're not comfortable yet, just work on, maybe video content in your stories and get more comfortable with it before you start working on reels.
You kind of touched on this already, but how do you recommend reaching a target market that tends to be over 40 on social media?
Yeah, that's a great question. On Facebook, getting, groups are a really great option. At seeing if there are Facebook groups that resonate with your target audience and also with your brand, where you might be able to find customers. You can also advertise in Facebook groups if you're really specific about things. So I would definitely spend time, if you have friends or family members that are part of that audience, talk to them and ask them where they're at, where do they get information, what are they seeing, and then see what you can use through Facebook Business Suite and Business Manager and Ads Manager to go in and try to target them. But traditionally for over 40, Facebook is going to be better than Instagram. But I mean, that is a hard audience. So I would just say do the work to try to figure out with the people that you know in that category where they're at. And then definitely look into Facebook groups, seeing if you can reach customers that way.
Thank you so much, Sarah.